In my bowl I have 150 grams of strong white flour, 1 teaspoon of yeast and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I'm just going to mix that around with a wooden spoon. In my measuring jug I have 150 millilitres of warm water. I haven't got that out of the tap. I've previously boiled the kettle and left it to cool, or you could boil the kettle and mix it with a little bit of cold water. It needs to be lukewarm, so it needs to be almost, if you put your finger in it, you don't feel anything. It doesn't feel warm and it doesn't feel cold. Into that I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of oil. I'm using olive oil, it doesn't matter which oil you use for this. And then I'm just going to mix the water and oil mixture into the flour, yeast and salt mixture. I'm not going to add all of it at once because I don't know whether I'll need it all. I've kind of made a little well in the middle of my bowl and I'm now mixing it in. I'm aiming to form a soft but not sticky dough. It does need to be soft though. I am actually going to add, I think, most of this liquid. But not all of it. If you do end up in the situation where you have added too much liquid and your dough is quite sticky, simply add some more flour and that will help sort that out. I'm now going to get the flour off my wooden spoon there and I'm going to put some flour onto my surface and I'm going to add the dough to the surface. This is basic bread dough and what we're going to do now is we're going to knead it, which will help make it stretchy, which is what we need it to be to make a good pizza. So I've now got my little ball of dough. To knead it, I'm going to pull some of the mixture over with the tips of my fingers and then I'm going to push it out with the heel of my hand to stretch the dough. So if you pull it over with your fingers and push it out with the heel of your hand and you can see how it's stretched there. Then I'm going to turn it, so I'm working on a slightly different part of the dough and do exactly the same thing. Over with the tips of the fingers, out with the heel of the hand, turn, over, out, turn. And all the time I'm stretching it. And what you'll find is once you get the hang of it, you can get quite quick at doing it and so it almost becomes one clean movement. So I'm using one hand to turn the dough and the other hand to stretch it. And you need to continue doing this for a good 5 minutes. Once you've kneaded it for 5 minutes, it should look like this. Be careful not to add too much flour when you're kneading it because the bread dough will take up as much flour as you allow it to take up and that will alter the consistency and you might end up with a dough that's not quite as soft as you'd like it if you do that. So, after 5 minutes I'm going to turn the dough over to the other side and roll it into a ball and you can see that's a really nice smooth surface to it. I'm going to pat that down with my hands and we now need to shape the pizza. There's various ways you can do this. You can go straight to the rolling pin and just try and roll it out and make it into a circle. I have got a circular pizza tray here that I'm going to use, but you may not have one of those at home. It's perfectly acceptable to do a rectangular pizza if you're going to use a rectangular baking tray, just whatever you've got at home. However, I am going to make my pizza with a nice little clean border edge to it, so if you want to have a go at doing this, then this is what you would need to do. With your fingertips, you need to roll the edge of the pizza in ever so slightly. And you need to go all the way around the pizza, rolling the edge in. Once once you've gone all the way round, if you use your fingers to press down the middle of the pizza, or the bread dough, you can see that there's a little border edge there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over and do exactly the same thing on the other side. Now we're going to roll the pizza out because we need to get it big enough to fit that tray. So a little bit of flour on the surface. Move it regularly when you're rolling out, otherwise it will stick to the surface. And then if you want to, once you get it to about this size, you can attempt to do what they do in pizza restaurants. And you can attempt to slap it out, which is what they call it. So what you're going to do is you're going to put the pizza on one hand and you're going to move it to the other hand, but as you move it to the other hand, you're going to stroke the dough up like this, and that's what stretches it. And whilst you're stroking the dough, you're going to flip your wrist so that your hand turns, and that's what keeps it round. Okay? So, like that. And then back to the other side, and then back to the other side. And again, just like when you're kneading, you'll find that you can get faster and faster at doing that, and it makes your pizza grow to a nice big circle. I think that is probably a nice size, and that just fits the tray beautifully. Okay, I'm ready to put my toppings on now. So for today I'm using sun-dried tomatoes, pesto, feta cheese, olives and a bit of basil. You can use whatever you want when you get to this stage. If you want to just make your standard tomato and cheese pizza, that's fine. You can just use some tomato passata and some grated mozzarella cheese or even grated cheddar cheese. I've put 2 teaspoons of pesto on the bread dough, and I'm going to use the back of my spoon to spread it around. And what I'm going to do, because remember we've made a border which has kind of disappeared, but hopefully it's going to magically reappear when we cook the pizza. So don't take the pesto all the way to the edges, leave a border. And then once the pesto's on, all I'm going to do is I'm going to dot feta cheese around, and then on top of that I've just sliced some sun-dried tomatoes. I'm going to pop those on, and then once the sun-dried tomatoes are on, we're just going to finish it off with some sliced pitted black olives. You can use whichever toppings you want, it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to add the basil leaves until it's come out of the oven at the end, otherwise they will just burn in the oven. But that is now ready to go into the oven. It just needs to go into an extremely hot oven, 220 degrees if you can get your oven that hot, gas mark 7, just for about 10-15 minutes tops, until the outside border is a nice light golden colour.